evening, everyone. Today is March 6, 2025. It is 5:35 p.m. And this is a meeting of the Golf Facilities Exploratory Committee. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, gentlemen. To open up tonight, let's go with old business, and I'll just take things a little bit out of order here. I'd like to start with the budget. As you were all presented this evening, with the National Golf Foundation report on Acushnet River Valley that was, asked for by the select board of the town of Acushnet. And in it, how can you do that?
Sorry.
That's all right. Good. So I'm just opening up with the budget aspect and page 26 in this as we've discussed over the last few meetings, the budget seems to be coming back as the main issue that we need to really try to define before we can advance any kind of ideas, size, location, the 3 buildings, 1 buildings, everything that has to do with it. So, I actually talked to Ed Isaac called me, told me about this report. Cindy, printed up a copy for all of us. And I found this page very interesting for trying to develop a budget for the size clubhouse that we're going to want to have. And, right off the top where it mentions the clubhouse program, 4,000 square feet, $500 to $600 a square foot construction. We got a low estimate of $2 million, high estimate of $2.4 million. And, after thinking about it and seeing the plan we had last week for 3,200 square feet, 4,000 sounds like a fair number to have, because even in the plans we reviewed last week and when Adam and I went out to Souther's Marsh, we saw some areas that need some help. Pro shop, correct?
Yeah, it was very small, yeah.
Very small.
Yeah, but their office was really big, so almost like, you could almost interchange those and have the pro shop be the office and the office be the pro shop, and so like that would you agree, or I don't know?
Oh, yeah.
So like that in a way wouldn't change the square footage, but Will was even saying, if he would go back and do it again, he would make things 25% bigger all the way around, so. That being said, 32 to 4,000 is probably a fair.
Yeah, so anyone else, I'm opening up the floor, what do you think about 4,000 square feet as a starting point, considering what we saw last week with the plans for a 3,200 square foot place? Do we think it'd be big enough? Is it too big? Is it too small?
So I'd just like to point out just some basic, the way the current operation runs, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the last meeting, but and it doesn't have to be within the building's square footage, but the build out of the project, whether it be outdoor covered space and then uncovered outdoor space, as well as the not pro shop, but the eating area where you're gonna have people dining, you should be able to, you should be thinking about matching the current footprint that you have, right? So when your group comes and they're 144 strong, nobody's getting left on the outskirts feeling uncomfortable, because that's what we currently have, right? So we have the trailer, we have the covered deck on the back, you have the tent, and as far as storage areas, we have 2 sheds that are maxed out to fill the volume of play and that we currently see, and the trailer is maxed out for storage. When we're full throttle in the heat of the season, there is not one place of space that is open. Every closet is packed, every hallway has a shelf on it that is stacked to the ceiling, and every shed is packed to the doors. So you open up and all your stuff is right there. So in this build out, we have to incorporate all of that in this building, because you don't want to go and build something that's going to offer a smaller footprint and think that you're gonna try and satisfy the volume of play that you currently have. You're limiting, your potential. So that's all I'm gonna put out there.
John?
Mr. Chairman, if everyone looks on page 56, it gives a comparable size golf courses. We're looking at 7,000, 8,000, where we're at 2,100 square feet. So even 4,000 is still on the low end compared to some of the other golf courses around here.
If you supplement that though with covered space where people can get their food, go under covered space and sit at a table and dine as opposed to being just indoors. As I stated last time, what was that? I said there was 5,500 outing rounds that we do. Maybe 24 of them were 100 plus. And then the rest of them were beneath 100 players. So if your indoor-outdoor capacity can satisfy 100 plus for the majority of your outings, and your runover is still housed within outdoor covered space attached to the building, right? And that you can close off and use when you need it, then if you can satisfy 80% of your outings with 100 and less players, then you should be fine, but you just have to anticipate. And the other thing too is some outings aren't coming here now because you don't have the capacity to, do that comfortably. So when you do build this and you do have outdoor covered space that will seat 144 hybrid, right, inside and out, you probably will see an influx of events that'll want to kind of try and come through and use your facility.
Question for Dana. So are we looking at a 4,000, I'm going to use that figure, a 4,000 square foot building plus additional space outdoors?
I would assume so, yes. Right, because the
what
4,000 wasn't that, what did we say the square footage was on Sutter's Marsh was what?
32.
32, so 4,000, yeah.
20% bigger.
And so if you took essentially their plan, right, expanded it to the size that we needed with the decking on the pictures that you showed, that should more than suffice, satisfy your volume of people.
Rich?
What is, when we said it was 3,200 square feet in Sutter's Marsh, does that include the area where they store the carts?
I wanna say so.
I believe the footprint's 3,200, and the basement is underneath, so I don't know if they're including that as part of the 3,200. I don't think so. I don't think so. And they only have 38 carts,
Yeah.
38 carts underneath, and they have a building that houses the others across the street. And when they use up 38 carts, they'll go and pull some out of the pen. It doesn't appear, my impression was that they're not pulling the amount of rounds that we are.
Right.
We use a full
Okay.
fleet of cots.
What's the fleet?
2 times a day,
60?
74.
74.
2 times a day we do rounds, 2 rounds.
Yeah,
and
but
then-
like I said, that should get you, one full charged battery should get you 2 rounds easily, and then overnight it'll charge. So like, as long as you have a place to house 74 carts,
Right.
that would be the only
So
issue.
that was part of our discussion last time was, were we gonna incorporate the carts under the building? Because that kind of determines where your square footage is going, at least for the foundation. Because you don't have to build it, as Dave and I have discussed, you don't have to build it out all the way around the foundation if you're putting the carts underneath. You can use part of that space on top for decking, right? So you don't have to maximize the box. But if you're trying to build the carts underneath, you have 74 carts. If you want to go and put another building and put your carts in, then you can do the building, the size that you want, but just, again, you want to entertain. We didn't create the game of golf. Our course plays at 144 players for a full shotgun, and that's our current
Right,
customer
but
base.
do we base our whole decision on 140 to 24 times a year that you have outings? Is that really what we're gonna start thinking about as this process moves forward? I'd just like to stay with the idea of the budget, how much are we gonna spend?
Right.
You know, because if, and I use this as an example because this is the example that we have. That's this study that was done. They're telling us that if we build a 4,000 square foot place, it's gonna be between 2 million and 2.4. The pro shop is gonna be $600,000, is that correct? Yeah, the pro shop food service.
That's 2 million, low end.
Right, and then cart barn, 600,000. Now this site, I believe, is like based if we're gonna build more than one building. If we're gonna
Right.
have a clubhouse, if you're gonna have a structure for the golf carts, the tournament pavilion. Now, we received, Rich and myself received things from, or shown by Selectman Wonar. He was looking at an open pavilion, but a strong wooden one built, you know, maybe with roll-down sides, if we're gonna go with the 3 building option. Okay, we're gonna talk about that in a little while, as far as what options we're gonna do, but, you know, just running these particular numbers of the first 4 items, you got 3.3 million on the low end and 4.1 million on the high end. That averages out to $3.7 million of, for the cost.
How far down, sorry to interrupt you, I just want to make sure I'm on the same page with you.
Yeah, where it says pro shop, new clubhouse program, pro shop, food service, cart barn, tournament pavilion, parking lot pavement. Those 4 items.
The parking lot paving is on the table here?
Pavilion, well, yeah, what we.
Well, I would,
we do that?
I'm throwing it on there, you know, I mean, it's up for discussion, so whether we include it on it, you know.
I don't want to lose sight of cost per square foot,
Okay.
right? 500 to 600 is a good number. It's you get a lot for that. We could explore.
It's gonna be prevailing wage, this project, correct?
Right.
So, right there, I mean, prevailing wage, you probably should use the high end anyways, because you're probably talking at least 25% on top of what it normally would be,
Why does it become prevailing
because
wage?
it's a municipal project.
Yeah. Right, we could build this cheaper.
This was
But
all,
people on this committee and people in,
That's why I'm saying
people in this
600
town,
square foot is a lot.
we could build this for less money, but it's a town project.
Well,
We
this-
have to send it, anything over, I believe, $10,000, you gotta send it out for 3 bids at prevailing wage. And, you know, it's, that's why we have some of the projects, we're able to incorporate the DPW for like cart paths because they have all the paving machinery, instead of having to send it out to whoever, which is gonna come in at a higher, much higher price to accomplish the project.
Did you speak to the architect?
I still have not received any communication back from him. Just for, have you? It says you sent them an email?
I was going to email today, but I didn't have time to.
Yeah, but
But
you
the
previously
previous
sent them.
email, a week or so ago, I had emailed, but did not hear back, unfortunately.
I mean, last week, the select board approved this contract. Now, whether that means they signed off on it completely and sent them a check, or if
No
it's...
checks have been sent.
Right, so, you know,
Maybe that's why it's not answering.
sorry, I'm in business myself, you know. You know,
I'm looking at
please,
these, of
okay.
course, your pro shop and your food service, which is the 2.4. Between the pro shop and your food service, isn't that gonna be the, that's gonna be your dining area, right?
Right.
right,
And then you're going down to the tournament pavilion, that's almost the same as, you're gonna be a deck. I don't think even at prevailing wage, a deck is gonna be 300,000, or what's the pavilion? 300,000.
I don't know.
Well, they had, okay, go ahead.
No, you,
They had an 1,800 foot deck at Sol.
1,800 square feet,
Yeah.
still wouldn't be 300,000, you know?
Just as a point of reference, again, from the report's perspective, the tournament pavilion, think of what's at the library, but just scaled out to a bigger thing and probably with like 3/4 sides on it. That's what his intent in this report is referring to. So,
Okay.
you know, wooden structure, similar to the library back there.
I wouldn't be shocked to see 300,000 or more for that. I mean, especially if you do, I guess it depends on what kind of materials you're choosing, but like if you do like, you know, the Trek stuff or something like that, that stuff gets really expensive and,
$10 a foot.
yeah, so.
Let's see what.
If I may, on this drawing in the back on page 27, it looks like the pavilion is on the putting green? Is that, am I looking at this correctly?
Well, that could be the clubhouse too.
Well, the clubhouse looks like it's on where the tent is now.
That was put there just based on our current network of roads, and in anticipating we were gonna go with a multi-building, setup, he just threw this out there. This isn't, you know, where he's going in with the sketches, he just kind of brainstormed it and said, all right, this is what you got, this is where we could possibly put it if you want to do something like that, but, I mean,
Right, and he was just overlaying like square footage
Right,
size
correct.
rectangles on top of the available space.
Yep.
Understood.
You know, gentlemen, I spoke with Mr. Kelly this week, or last week, and, you know, I briefly touched base with Selectman Warner and Selectman Hinckley, and, you know, the number I'm hearing is in line with this $3.5 million. Because once again, this has to go through the town meeting.
right,
I mean, we can sit here and say 5 million, you know, build a 5,000 square foot or 6,000 square foot facility, and, you know, if the number's too high, it's never gonna even reach,
right.
you know, it'll come out of this room and then it'll die on the vine by the time it gets to you guys and the select board when they see 5.5 million or something. So I keep hearing a number that's in the $3.5 million range. And I asked Dave to come here too, to give us a little insight. If we try to stay to the 3.7 million, 3.5, 4 million, in that range, what the costs are actually gonna be to us, what the town has to back us, I guess you could call us that, co-sign for the money, and that. So Dave, if you had a few numbers that you'd like to share with us.
And so just as an example, and for those of you who don't know, my real job is in municipal finance, so I called my contact at the bank to say, if the town of Acushnet went out to bond for, I said 10 years, so personally I was thinking that we wouldn't want to go any longer than that. So I said, just to use some round figures, I said, if we went for $3 million for 10 years, what could we expect the banks to bid as interest rate given today's market? And she said to be conservative on the higher side, should use 3.5 to 3.7. She's seeing some bids coming in a little bit lower than that, but she said that would be a good high-end conservative rate. So if you cost it out $3 million at 3.7% for 10 years, your first year payment would be round figures $410,000 with a declining balance every year after that if you make equal principal payments, down to $311,000 in your final year. And as a point of reference, the golf course has been funding on the current bond $340,000, $350,000 a year forever now anyway, which will be paid off in 2027. I believe that's the date right now.
Correct.
So this is right in line with the payments we've already been making for the past 25 years, which, again, as a golf committee person, that's where I was trying to keep mine. If you read some of the report, they had like $400,000 to $500,000 in debt and some projections. I personally didn't want to see us going that high, so that's why I was trying to back into. I likened it to, you've been buying a car, right, you have a monthly payment on your car, you paid it off, but you've also put 100,000 miles on your car and you need a new one. I want to keep making that same payment, what can I get in today's market? So it's kind of the reference point I took with this, and that put us right in the dollar figure we've been paying, so I felt comfortable seeing that as a starting point to really see how that fit into this potential amount that you guys are looking at here.
So I think, to your point earlier, to start this, if we establish a number, and then we can work backwards to square footage and cost per square foot, we can tell the architect that we have to have prevailing wage to conduct this build, and he could design the fit and finishes around that, right?
Exactly.
We don't have to be a high-end New Bedford Country Club, right? We can have a nice facility.
Right.
Add, the architect probably knows what prevailing wage would be and just can back out of that, the fit and finishes, the countertops, things like that, all the millwork, so that it will fit into that budget number per square foot.
And my whole point is stating the 144, I'm not trying to overbuild the size of the building. Whether you're doing that number, right, backing into your number, is that 70% indoors, 30% outdoors, 60% indoors, 40% outdoors? But we can kind of manipulate that and manage it to whatever it is. But to think, we should be trying to make sure that people that come and have a full event, they should be treated as daily and that should be comfortable as the small ones.
That's what I just kind of did quickly. Figuring a deck at 60 by 30, which would be 1,800 square feet. So if you deduct that from the 4,000, you're back to 22 on the building itself. So part of that is going to be
Yep, give and take.
entertainment. A good part is going to be the entertainment. I mean, the clubhouse, and you still need the kitchen area. So maybe you should go even a little more outside, because an outside deck is going to cost you a lot less than a building.
Sure.
So if you can keep the building even at 2,600 square feet and do the rest outside, going to be a big difference.
Right.
You know, when you run through that,
What I'm trying to do, and just to get us, so we're not just keep coming every weekend, or a week,
Yeah.
stuck on a budget, we gotta come up with a number that when the architect, when we do get in touch, which hopefully is
Soon.
within the week, right? Because I saw his meeting, he said if we get him something 2.5 months, that was from 2 weeks ago, and the one that I missed at the police station where, he says in 2.5 months, we can pretty much be on that schedule to get it to town meeting in the fall, which is what I heard initially that the selectmen want to do. They talked about a special town meeting, but the point that was brought up is that's gonna cost us more money, because now we gotta have another meeting. And you gotta hire police, you gotta hire the workers, and even if it's $3 or $4 grand, it's $3 or $4 grand. You gotta publish it, you gotta do a warrant, you gotta publicize it. So, is that the most sensible thing to do? John?
Do we want a hard number? I'll use your figure there of 3 million, or do we want a range?
Well, we have a range here, we got 3.5 to 4 million, I mean, we could start with that, by these numbers, that says we can get a 4,000 square foot place, and the numbers themselves, the golf committee they're gonna use some of their funds, correct? I mean, we haven't come up with an idea of that.
Right, the larger picture, and not specifically just the building, but of all addressing like things on this page, there are certainly funds and retained earnings within the golf course fund that, at least again from my perspective, could and should be put towards addressing, infrastructure at large of the course.
Parking lots?
Exactly.
Those sort of
Parking lot,
lighting.
addressing the bridges, if there's other, equipment down the road, if there's some, the cart paths that aren't done in certain spaces. So putting that all together, absolutely the combination of something that would potentially be borrowed, as well as, a good chunk of money that we've been saving up over the past few years.
So would your committee be most comfortable with that $3 million figure that you put out there before?
I mean, speaking just for myself, and looking at what it would cost in an annual payment, I think 3 to 3.5 would probably be the high end of being able to wrap it into the annual budget and feel very comfortable with it.
Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion and to set a budget at 3.5?
Well, I wouldn't, I'd give that a midway point. We have, we got 3.7 just off this list here.
Yeah.
So if we're 3.5 to 4, or, I mean, what does everyone think here?
So the numbers that you based off of the loan was 3.7, right? And that's a loan of 3.7?
It was 3.7% interest.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So how much was the note for?
3 million.
3 million, and the rest would come from the reserve fund.
Right, but it just sounded like he was maybe more going towards like, that would be extra, not counting what we're trying to plan here, is that?
Well, you know. Okay, so it's
I
kind
know,
of.
just giving you a ballpark
Right.
figure for what our current budget, what we currently afford to pay, so we wanna try and fit the new bill
Right.
into that current.
No, I know.
Something 3 to 3.5 million would be the amount borrowed,
Right.
plus what we could put in from the savings.
Mhm.
So, you're right, you know, I could see a 500,000, 750,000 from savings going towards that project as well. So if you want to add those two together, you probably would be, to your point, looking at this, maybe 4 on the high end.
Right.
Right. I mean, we're also talking about 2 years out here.
Right, by the time.
You know, by the time, we're just appropriating the money. So if the town can appropriate, $2 million, 2 point, I mean, I'm sure this will come under some discussion. But, those are numbers that the courts can support. The courts can pay this off. It's not like we're going outside and saying, oh gee, now we gotta, increase our fees by so much, and hopefully, we gotta increase the play, and we gotta increase. I'm not looking to increase, I'm looking to stay with what the course is making now and work it from there.
Sure.
And not extend this to an unnecessary thing.
Well,
And I mean, I say myself, I'm opening it up to all you guys, I mean, it's.
we've already lived that nightmare, right? We've been chasing our tails for many years until we've hit that threshold where we're at now, like with COVID. So now the business is booming, we're sold out, the numbers look good, our reputation is there. It's the other courses that are chasing their numbers. We're not chasing our numbers, so I mean, to overextend ourselves and go into that, go to that level of pressure would not be a wise decision, definitely not.
John?
My thought is, after reading this report, if you build it, they will come. And my thought is, if you stay within, say, a $3 million figure, you already have that projected in a comfort zone. And if you increase your revenues off the new building, then that's even better, because now it's less pressure on your budget.
Well, build it and they will come, they're already coming.
Yeah.
So this is, we've said this before, we're sold out, I mean, every day. So our full tee sheet for regular tee times, our leagues, I
Yeah.
mean, you guys that drive there and playing at our course, you drive in the parking lot at 4 o'clock, there's nowhere to park, because we've done our 2.5 turns
Yeah.
for the day.
This would basically, increase the revenue from the people that are already there.
Correct,
Right.
yes. They will
Around for
be,
them.
right, they will be leaving the premises to go, and meet elsewhere, or go out to
Now,
dine
that
out
said,
elsewhere.
We would discuss this with Will at Sellers Mush. He kind of alluded to the fact that their kitchen is open 11 to 4. And their lunches, or I guess whatever they do for food and beverage during that time, doesn't make all that much, he said.
Mhm.
He said that they do okay in outings.
Right.
But they're not making a ton of revenue, positive revenue from that 11 to 4, just tea time, people are finishing their round, coming in for some food and some drinks.
Yeah.
So that surprised me. I thought that the course would, but he also did say every course is different, every dynamic is different. Some of these other courses are like more of a restaurant, and then they have a golf course added to it, kind of a mentality. So, we don't have a crystal ball to look at what Acushnet will be in that aspect, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that.
No, finish, I just wanted to get in line, get the cue. So, to expound on his point, a couple of years ago, I attended a mass golf summit for 9-hole golf courses in Massachusetts. I don't know if any of you have ever seen, they have a headquarters up in Northern Mass, and probably 15 golf courses represented there, and every single one of them said that food and beverage is an anchor on their business. That it's a difficult thing to make money on. Breaking even's fine because it's for the membership. Most of these were private courses, if I remember correctly. But some of those private courses, they had 300 members. So they weren't getting the kind of play we're talking here. But it is something to keep in the back of our mind that it's not a giant revenue stream is all I'm trying to.
Right.
to add.
Wait.
Do you know how big that cot pen right now is?
It's about 40 by 60, it's about the same size as the tent.
Yeah, I measured it, yeah.
40 by 60?
40 by 60, so that's 4,800 square feet.
4,800 square feet, so if you did an 80
No, that's
by
not
40 building, that's
2,400.
yeah,
Like I said,
24.
2,400 square feet.
But if you put a tent with that, it's 48.
But if you did an 80 by 40 building, that's 3,200 square feet, that's your building. Then if you did a deck, even outside, at 60 by 20, it's another 1,200 square feet. So right there, you'd have 5,000 square feet,
Right, right.
with 32 being the same as Southern Mass, same footprint. Plus you'd have the
Outside space.
outside space, which is another 1,200 feet.
That's what's gonna save you money and carry that volume that's not your consistent, everyday thing.
And at the 32, it's gonna keep the building cost down a little
Yes,
bit,
Absolutely.
because the deck, again, is gonna cost you a third of what the building is gonna cost you.
And,
So that's where we should go to find out the size of the building, what we're gonna do, building, and then the outside space combined.
Well, that's why I'm relying on the architect to tell us, too.
Right, he's
You
gonna.
know, his first question was, what's your budget
Right.
at his meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're sitting
Now we
here trying to decide, well, do we want a pro shop, 600 square, and this, and, you know, when the team approaches them, you know, I wanna kind of put it down like, here's our budget, here's our two options, which we can talk about after this, and, you know, the location, where we put them. You know, that sort of thing, and then work from there, let him come back with us and give us some more, you know, conceptual plans, or just thoughts to start expanding upon. You know, what size do you want this, what do you want the kitchen for? What do you want, you know, all those other things about the building itself, but, you know, and then go from there.
quick, point of reference on page 71, it has projected cash flow based on this report. 2025, 188,000 for food and beverage, but if you go to 2027, it's projected $341,000 for food and
What
beverage.
page is that?
Page 71.
I think that's because that's when they expect to have a clubhouse built in 27.
Yeah, and all I'm using this for is to say that it seems to me substantial that you're gonna add over $100,000 in revenue. I don't know if that,
Do they have salaries in there?
Yeah, but now you have to pay people to work there, that's gonna deduct from that, you know?
one of the figures in there was that you would project, I think, 600,000 more in revenue, but 300,000 would be expenses, so you'd have a net gain of $300,000.
Yeah, they do want 371.
But to Richard's point too, I understand that you're gonna have people there, and those people are gonna come up on your expense side, so yes, you make more.
Is that what you're making in food and beverage now, like 180,
I think we're at
184? Is that where they pulled this number from?
Oh, yeah, he has our actual numbers, on this.
24.
Yes.
Because that's where the big jump is, and
Yes.
it's 26 to 27, it goes up $150,000. So I'm assuming that's.
Yeah, well, that's assuming a new clubhouse is open.
Correct.
Because there's, you can see it says ongoing construction and then new clubhouse
Right.
open.
But
And
I
that would
think-
start in 2027.
It talks about the potential, what's gonna happen when you're built out.
If I could speak to this point too, we said, I think with Sutter's Marsh, it's coincidentally, that is about the time span that we operate. Weekdays in the summertime, we'll go 10 to 3, because we got leagues that come in after that, and leagues don't, you know, they don't really come after the food, they're here for a quick 9 and they're out. But on the weekends, we'll run it from 10 to 4, if we have a 9, we'll run it longer. But, yeah, there's no like, there's real no morning draw coming, you know, for food. Most guys come, they're playing golf, they're packing snacks, among other
Yeah.
beverages. But that's where I see the pickup possibly, is if we can eliminate the access to the parking lot, when we do the build out, we're gonna sell more booze. Because we're gonna stop people from bringing booze on.
So then what's gonna happen is the people who come now, based on what I'm reading here, are gonna stay and drop a few more bucks.
Probably, yes.
And it's not gonna be like, you're not gonna get people coming there sake of just coming there. It's mostly gonna be your golf crew.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I think that's a safe assumption.
Okay.
What percentage, I'm not sure,
Right,
because we haven't lived that life yet.
right, right.
But-
It will be a private course, and if some folks from the town or adjacent towns wanted to pop in, we wouldn't turn them away, right?
Right,
There would probably be some curiosity in the beginning.
absolutely.
So are we comfortable with 3 to 3.5 million? Is that,
I'm comfortable with 3.5 million.
and back out of that square footage and
Correct.
cost per square foot?
As
We
we
can give that
progress
to
with
the
the
architect?
architect.
Right, we can iterate on that, on all those numbers and come up with a ballpark. He's gonna be able to help us from that.
Yeah.
And I think telling him about prevailing wage is critical. And can I ask a question about paving the parking lot? You know, $500,000, give or take. Is that something the town could do for us and that we would not have to take a note out for that?
Do they have a number for us?
Possibly.
Do they have a number right?
I'm asking a question because you guys mentioned they could do cart paths in the
Right,
in the
right.
past. So if I'm wrong, then I'm fine.
From the perspective of how the report was written, he told me that he was pricing that out, you know, on the high end of, you know, like a private company doing it. Again, just err on the high side of estimates. And I think we could absolutely, if we timed it right with working with the town, we could probably cut that in half.
Yeah, I just did a pretty big parking lot and that's a big number right there.
Right,
He wrote
right.
that, boy, admitted
I
that he thought it was
just-
high on that.
Okay.
We did a top coat on the road about, in the Catino years, 12 years ago or so. It was about 90 grand to do a top coat from Main Street all the way down. Square footage wise, it would be similar to or close to what the parking lot would be. So, but that was a decade ago, so if you doubled that price, it should be right around what you're saying.
Right.
Two and a half.
I mean, just from the little bit that I know, you're gonna pave a 60,000 square foot parking lot, you're gonna have to go through the town conservation, because we have wetlands within 100 feet.
Final notice of
So
intent.
there might be some engineering fees, you know, of tens of thousands of dollars, 20, 30,000 engineering fees to move that water somewhere else when it rains.
But if you're able to do this in-house with the DPW, if that's a possibility, you're gonna save a boatload of money.
Right, you know.
Can they manage the drainage? Because I just went through a massive project like this where we added, 12,000 square feet of roof, a ton of parking, an extra building, and we had to build these gigantic drainage swales. And I mean, and the new rules are that you have to, when you create impervious land, that you have to, it has to perk out somewhere else. And they make us do it for the 100-year storm.
Right.
So the two drainage swales we built, retention ponds, retention ponds, they're enormous.
Right.
They're probably 2 acres worth of space
Wow.
at my little property in Acushnet.
No, I-
And that was a lot of engineering.
Right, so those numbers, I mean, they're throwing them in here big, but I think it covers us. You know what I mean? I wouldn't, I'm hoping that it doesn't, for those 4 items, Pro Shop Food Service, Cap Barn, Tournament Pavilion, parking lot paving. I would anticipate we can do it in that. I mean, the clubhouse itself, if that comes in at 2.5.
Well, I just did 3,200 square feet at $6 a square foot would be 1.9 million. That's for just the inside facility. Even the deck, 60 by 20, 1,200 square feet. I mean, even if you did it at $200 a square foot, which I think is a lot, is 240,000
Right,
for a deck.
right.
So even between those two, you have 2.3 million.
The deck is, right.
But then I got 240,000, but $200 a square foot, I think that's a lot.
Well, they like coming in on the budget, so it's a
Well,
it's
that's-
a
and
positive.
they're basing this
They're using it somewhere else.
Until
Right.
unforeseen circumstances.
Is it gonna be the sort of thing where the 3.5 million we're saying, does that have to include the car barn if it's separate? Does that have to include does it have to include the parking lot,
Right, exactly, we could.
Are we saying like, if we present that, is it gonna make it even harder for us, you know what I'm saying? Or we present them the building at this number, and then with an eye on it, of course, but not like as part of our proposal, and saying, all right, in just to let you know, right behind it, you're gonna be spending a lot on that parking lot, you know, and stuff like that. Like, what is our, as far as our goals in this committee, you know?
Correct.
The numbers, if you add up the low estimate right to the parking lot paving plus site work, which I just highlighted, that means they probably thought about the engineering and things, is 3.28 million. That's with a car barn, that's with a pavilion, and the paving, at 500 per square foot at 4,000 square feet. So I think to answer your question, the 3.5 million, 3 to 3.5, we're there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if we
Yeah.
can shave off some stuff with the square footage or price per square foot, we could get into the space that Dave mentioned where we can afford to make that same payment we're making now.
The high end is
Big difference.
4.1,
Right.
but 4.1 if we're taking out 3.5 plus maybe 750 from what's already in the fund, that would kind of cover the high end as well.
That sounds like a
Right, 'cause-
reasonable number.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know if they're gonna hit ledge, I mean, everything is unexpected sometimes. You have to move the electrical utilities. The time I was there talking with Steve Tibbles, he brought up the telephone poles that go through the parking lot. You know, I never like realized that, but what are you gonna do with that issue? You know, you're gonna bury those, you're gonna put new poles and reroute the whole thing? So there are a number of variables that they're gonna encounter and work from there, but you know, I'm comfortable with 3 to 3.5 million as to present to the architect, here you go, this is max, this is with the parking lot, this is with everything included, finished deal, you know, we're done. If it comes back, well, we can't do the parking lot right now, well, then we might have to live with, you know, until we prove that it is generating income, and because there are variables, is golf gonna stay the way it is? If it dips 10%, goes up 10%, there's just numerous variables that are involved. But I wanna feel comfortable to present to the architect and, you know, not spin our wheels. Not spin our wheels, and get what we want, you know.
Let's start there, and let's see what we
And
can.
as far as
Okay.
placement, that's
Okay.
upon
Well, we're
the
gonna talk
architect.
next.
Oh,
We'll talk next, it's on the next part of the agenda. So gentlemen, do I have a motion to?
1 second, David, one other thing.
Yes.
Could it be presented in the form of, this is our budget, can we do a 32 square foot inside and a 1,200 outside for that cost as well?
Right, we can decide however we'd like to do it. I would say, I saw the 3,200 square foot, it did seem,
A little small.
it did seem a little small. I don't think we would suffer by going over another 20% to 4,000 square feet or somewhere in that area. Because it just did seem a little small.
Should we best to aim high then, and then if we have to back off, then we back down to a,
Well, this is what the architect is gonna help us all decide. We just need, when I come, you know, when we eventually get in contact with them, and tell them, like, here's our parameters, we want, you know, we got this number to work with, we got, you know, we're gonna talk about options, you know, I think we're all in agreement that we're gonna try to do 2 options, the hill and then existing. You know, if we're existing, we have 3 buildings, we need a cart building, we need a pavilion of sorts, and a clubhouse, you know, and see what kind of concepts you can come up with.
All right, I'd like to make a motion for the budget to be written down as 3.0 to 3.5 million.
Do I have a second?
second?
Oh, no, let me move that. I move it. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Dave, while we're just kind of bouncing through the agenda, where are the funds coming from to pay for the architect?
So this initial phase right now is coming out of the available budget we have right now with the golf course.
Okay, thank you. It's not something we're capitalizing, it's just gonna be operating expenses.
Exactly.
Got it, thank you.
And do you know how that contract was written? I mean, how far does that take us? Because I haven't seen
It gets,
the contract.
the specifications were to get,
I can go grab it and make some copies.
Could you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. That would work out great.
It was designed to get us through what we're talking about here, a couple of options of high-level schematic design, not construction documents, but cost estimates, and a couple of options of, location and size.
Renderings and things like that.
Right, not, we were trying to keep it at a reasonable cost right now as well. We can do as much as little as we want, but the minimum expectations were like, some 2D renderings, a couple of options, and cost estimates.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's the way normally things like this go, so.
Right, and then once you narrow it down, say, yep, we really like that, you can go into your 3D renderings, your more detailed costs.
Finishes, things like that.
Right.
Very good. I like it, that worked out well. I'm glad we have a number now. Well, let's talk about the next thing. I kept it simple here. We kind of covered size. Well, what about location? We got the locations.
My question with the location is that something that is based on the final design and the architect's recommendation? Or is that something that we should have input on?
I believe it's, my thinking is that it's two concepts. Plan A, you got I've been given things like this, the outdoor pavilions on a larger scale. That seems to be of interest to a certain number of people outside of our group here who have contacted me and said, hey, we should have a clubhouse, have the outdoor pavilion, and then have a building for the golf carts to stay inside, because everybody, I believe, well, you mentioned it last week, Rich, there is the huge appetite to have the golf carts covered. The gentleman, Will, at Southern's Marsh was surprised that the golf carts stay outside on here.
Nobody does that.
They're just sitting out there.
Yeah, especially if you're going electric.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
impossible.
It's impossible, right? So,
yeah, and we're in a position that we have option B, which is an aesthetically pleasing option, being up on the hill, putting the carts underneath. You're looking, and here comes, kind of like Resi, here comes the hole, the people playing out, it's coming right at you. On the deck, you can see one, and you can see 10 or 7, whatever,
And I would like to speak to that, add to that, is naturally, as guys finish, when they come in groups of 14, 16, 24 and larger, that 18th green, it sits stadium style, so they'll go drop off their carts, and they will naturally gravitate towards going standing at that stadium, pick up a beer at the grill on the way, and then everybody sits up there anyway. So, it's kind of like, before you build the roads, let the people make the path first, and then you put, you put the walkways where they walk. Well, they're naturally drawn to sit and watch as their groups are coming in. So, if it's financially feasible, that would be good to do, but if we hit ledge or it's gonna cost too much money, then it is what it is.
If you do a 4,000 square foot building, how many golf carts are you gonna be able to fit?
Well, from the meeting that the architect was in, he said 4,500 square feet to put 80 golf carts with room to walk around, because today, they were.
Yeah, and they were in all different directions.
Yes,
It was,
it's a mess.
you want it nice and neat. It's like, let's be able to pull them in, that when you can pull them out, like, ideally if there's 2 doors, one in the front, one in the back, you just drive them right in, plug it in, and then they can go right back out the next day or whatever. Their setup was just, I wouldn't want to be the person parking them at night.
I have a ton of experience in that at Resi, it's awful. We're squeezing them in like sardines, and getting them out's harder than getting them in. Do we know the square footage of the space we have now for the carts?
It's 60 by 80, right? 60 by 80.
Yes, 2,400.
So
6 by
4,000's more than enough for that.
Right.
And but, mind you,
I'm not saying to go smaller, I'm just saying that's enough.
they're parked now side to side, so there's no, if you're going electric, you want, like I said, you wanna go 2x2s with a walk space, so you can plug them in and walk your rows. And then, like I said, if we can plan it right, paint the lines on the floor, park them in their boxes, and, organize it.
If you give yourself 50 square feet a car, times 72, that's 3,600 square feet.
Okay, so we're in the range.
I have a question
Yes,
regarding the
Rich.
carts, it's not exactly germane to the size, but is it written in stone that we're going with electric? Or is gas still an option? Totally just asking.
We have, as I said, I'm working on getting some estimates from the vendor on both, and timing sequences of our current commitments, financial commitments to pay off our current leases. So once I get that back, we can kind of play around with it. Going electric will cost us a little bit more money, but I think in the long run, if you can eliminate your gas charges.
If the gas, you're not gonna put them under the building.
Well, that was my next question. If you go to gas, does that change your storage?
Absolutely.
I would assume so.
Yeah, I believe you're not gonna
Resi's
put gas
electric.
carts under the building. That, you
But
know,
we were gas before, and we had them inside of the building.
Well, inside the building, but underneath the
No,
clubhouse.
underneath the building.
They were underneath the building. At
at
Resi, before we went electric, they were underneath the building.
Really?
Maybe fireproof or?
It's the only car barn we had.
Really?
That, I'm sure
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure the.
You can put a garage under a house.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's right.
I'm just asking because if the budget shrinks, and I'm not saying that the car budget is separate from completely.
I don't think we're leaning any one way. We've always just kind of pipe dreamed it.
That's what I want to look into it.
Yeah, that's fair. Listen, my chips are in for electric cars, they're incredibly nice. You know, we have them at Resi where there's salt water everywhere, it's not the best solution. But the batteries today than they were 20 years ago, are way better. They run
Yes,
forever,
the
you know.
rep was-
The big hurdle with it, and I don't want to get off topic too much, is winterizing them is super important. You gotta unplug them and put them in bed.
Are they going to trickle charges for the winter?
Yeah, they get unplugged actually,
Okay.
they put them to sleep.
Okay.
Well, I think with electric came the idea of probably or potentially putting solar on the clubhouse, which would essentially eliminate a long-term, you know, whatever the budget is for gas for golf carts for the year goes to $0 pretty much if they do the solar correctly. So that is another plus to do it.
I think the car barn being ready for, regardless of which direction you go, being ready for electric charging stations
Yeah.
is good vision for the property and for the golf course. I mean, I think it's important.
That's a copy of the contract that they signed.
So the numbers here for the car barn, just including PC's got including charging, is 600,000 to 800,000. Would the architect seek out that cost, or should we do some due diligence on our own to see what an installation of a separate building, because in this proposal, it's a separate building, if I'm reading this correctly.
Correct.
So the architect can build out a two-story building, for lack of a better term, a basement to put carts in with charging stations, or a separate building for storing the golf carts. And maybe that's even in the same spot that we currently store them, just expand it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So would there be an appetite to look at other, would the architect manage all that, is my question, or?
Well, that's what I'm assuming he's gonna do.
Okay.
You know, I just get that from that meeting then. When we talked that, he said he wanted to get a budget and he wanted to get some ideas. I mean, he was kind of trying that. The one at the golf course with him, didn't work. And, you know, so if we have those ideas, how we want to go after it, certain sizes, I guess we can work on the sizes of the pavilion and the building that needs to house the golf carts. You know, that's kind of one concept. And location, where are we gonna put it, you know, I mean, we're gonna maybe come up with a little bit idea of what the infrastructure is, but it's all there.
Right.
You got water main, you got electric, you got septic. As mentioned in the previous meeting, the septic was designed for a bigger clubhouse, 160 players. So, you already have that infrastructure that we were able to literally tap into. You don't have to start moving a leaching field and digging up a tee box and or a green and all the, you know, piping underneath. Because from my understanding, it runs from the maintenance building down gravity and then from the clubhouse now, and then pumped up to the 7 tee box for the leaching field. It works that way. So,
As far as the location of, if you use the back page of 27, you see all the open space that we have back there, and as you put in that hypothetical, three building concept, I was just thinking proactively, if and when this project takes place, however, whatever space they use over there, if we are in operation during this process, the carts are already located on the left-hand side, and our trailer is here, so I mean, the DPW could cut a dirt path to bring us down to one, and we could work around that while this project was taking place if need be.
I think that's what his other architect, Tim Garish from Gardner and Garish, is working on, or will
We'll
participate in that, and give us some temporary pathways to get to where you need to go, and consider things like Pepsi deliveries,
Yes.
and how, after you move things around. I like the idea of where we're going. We've got a budget, we're kind of close on size, and size is gonna be dictated by the budget, but I think the location is two-pronged, right? It's gonna be in the ideal spot, which is overlooking the 18th hole, which most golf courses have a clubhouse that, where you finish. That'd be great. But with the budget we have to also consider the alternative, which isn't gonna be terrible, because what you got now,
Right.
right, works.
pathetic,
It's working.
right?
Well,
That
Well,
location will work.
now, right, oh, what you got now as far as the structure,
Yeah,
right.
what do you have now in location, if you had to build another building, regardless of whether the car park was under it or off to the side, it's gonna work. It's just, it might not fall in our budget to put it in the best place, because you're gonna add costs when you move the green, deal with whatever underneath the ground is and infrastructure, we should consider it.
Right,
Well, it shouldn't be that difficult for the architect to give us quotes on both scenarios, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, if it's not that far off, that maybe they're similar price for all, and then we
That would be
kinda
great.
kind of have your pick at that point, but yeah, I mean, if it's, the expensive one is over the budget, I mean,
It's gonna be more money.
yeah.
I mean, you're relocating the putting green, you're adding $80,000 to $100,000.
So, I mean, but if it's close, I would lean towards the new position.
Everybody in this room, I think, agrees with that. I
I mean,
just,
that's
my
fine.
instincts are that it's not gonna be close, unfortunately, just by,
Dan, I think I might have asked this last week, so forgive me if I'm being redundant. Is there any documentation based on initial golf course, like soil test borings or things like that tell us what's underneath the ground?
I'm not familiar with that, because it was constructed prior to,
Yeah.
it was constructed prior to my employment.
Yeah.
there's probably some reports in the town, because you've got to do some of those things. You got to do test pits,
Yeah.
you have to know what's, and somebody probably did a little geological survey of the
Yeah.
property. I mean, they almost have
It
to.
has to be something.
They said in the first meeting, there was ledge on one corner or something. The first meeting we had, they
Yeah.
mentioned it.
On the putting green?
He mentioned it the first time, I'm not sure, it's, that first time when the architect was that, he spoke about that. He said there was ledge on like one
I
corner.
mean, it used to be a gravel pit, all those little gravel pits.
But I mean, even if that is the case, as was stated, there's a ton of space in that area that if he needs to back off 20 or 30 feet or 40 feet and it's still feasible, then, you know, it is what it is. And if we have to scrap it and move the plan to the next place.
any other comments?
We're still talking about the location, correct?
Right, well,
I think
right,
the location,
two
that would
locations.
be where the
Right.
putting green.
I think he, like Adam said, we get two quotes or two plans on the putting green, which is everyone agrees that's the ideal spot, and then current location.
Now, if we're gonna go with different buildings, we're gonna 86 the tent? Do you think the tent is the last option? Like if we had to build a pavilion like they have behind the library
If
or
you're
over the
not gonna
council on
do
aging?
an outdoor space, then you gotta have the tent, because that's already part of your facility. You know what I mean? So if you're not gonna replace that outdoor covered space with the new build out, then you gotta keep it. Somewhere on the property, you gotta keep it, because that's part of our current existing
Sure.
square footage of the operation. That's more than half of the operation, to be honest with
That's
you.
your operation.
Without that, I got a
Well,
deck
you
and
gotta
a
keep-
grill.
Yeah, but,
And 6 steel tables.
yeah, but are you more talking once this project is completed, 86 it, or, like,
No, like,
we clearly
in
have
our design, in our thinking, do we wanna just not do a tent and do something like an outdoor pavilion like this? And send the architect in that direction,
So,
or, go ahead, Rick.
Mr. Chairman, the quote, or this breakdown here that NGF provided us, has 200 to 300,000 for an outdoor pavilion.
Yeah.
4,000 square foot, bigger than what you got now. Outdoor pavilion. The location of it is part of the whole location idea, right? Which direction we're gonna head, whether it's current or ideal. So I think, I don't know what they're calling an outdoor pavilion, what does that really mean? It's better than a tent, is what I'm assuming. Does that make
Right,
sense?
permanent
But if it's $200,000, it's not a whole lot.
Right.
He's got
Right.
300,000 here.
Well, I guess the first price was 200, was the smallest one, you don't get a lot for that, you're not getting a building or a deck
You're
with a
not
roof
getting-
over it,
No.
right? So that almost sounds like these folks talked about that as almost like a tent.
I
A
believe
permanent
it's
tent or tent?
a cement floor with
I
a.
mean, it's
You're in
not,
the business, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel these numbers
I
kinda,
don't know what that is.
Flow,
My
I mean,
wife goes to
well, this was
library.
a year, this is a year old now, too.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, I would say these, we should be on the high end of,
On the high end?
yeah, on everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome.
You know,
If you could do
yeah,
that for
It's just the
200.
way it is, like building materials
enough for
right
that.
now, like,
Yeah.
if it's prevailing wage, I think you gotta be on the high end, you know?
Not to mention, this isn't gonna even be done for 2 years from now, so I doubt things go down from that either, so.
Yeah. Yeah, for like he was saying, like for an outdoor pavilion being built, like 200,000 is on the low end. You know, it's more of, you know, a patio, a tent, like that sort of thing, you know, like a metal structure with a tent that, you
Right,
know, something like that.
So I think the architect will help with that too, right?
Right,
yeah.
We could show him some of the options that are out there, that, like the one David provided us, the
Yeah.
owner.
right,
He
right.
provided that option.
Yes.
And any of those options, that'll give him, so when I looked at his resume and talked to a few folks down the Cape where he's primarily done a lot of work, he's done stuff like this, he's designed things like this. This guy, they have a pretty good resume.
Yeah, he's legit.
You guys picked him for a reason.
Yeah. Oh, he stood out out of all the options by far, no?
Yes.
It was-
I think we just have a smaller budget than they probably used to dealing with. I'm being realistic with what we have to work with.
Well, on their website, it says the Maya Comet clubhouse was 14,000 square feet,
Right.
so.
Different animal.
Different animal.
Different animal.
Different animal. Different animal. So how would you like to play this for the next meeting? I mean, or let me just open it up for, you know, what would you like to discuss in the time we got here tonight? Is there any other things that, okay?
I think it would be most productive to have a meeting ASAP with the architect, to kind of, after we have a budget, we establish, tell him what the budget is, and then pick his brain on certain things, and, you know.
Maybe we can get him, you know, I don't know how, I'm trying to get him.
Yeah, right. No,
Literally,
Yeah.
you call up and they say, hey, he's on the other line, he'll call you
But
right
I just don't know
back.
how much more we can do
Yeah.
with just this group
Do
until.
we wanna formulate something for him that shows him like our needs, like our 100%, we need this part, we want this part, we might
Okay,
like this part, but you know, it's up to the budget,
Yeah.
like something like that,
That's a
like.
good idea.
yeah, well, we know that, we'll call it Plan B, with, up on the hill. We know that we want the carts stored on the ground, under the building.
Mhm.
Now, if that entails a bigger foundation and a smaller house on top, clubhouse on top, we know that we want, you know, the clubhouse to be above it. We know we want a deck around it. We want that kind of fluidity where you can be inside and outside. I mean, at Southern's Marsh, the size they had, they definitely you need that to move out to the deck. That's incorporated into having 144 people,
Yeah.
100 people. They have a roof on that deck too, so, you know, that, you know, it's like a 3/4 roof. You
Yeah,
did it
right,
in
covers 3/4.
3/4 of the deck out. It's not enclosed.
Well, I think in season, they do have an enclosure on it. I have seen it with the plastic.
Isinglass, yeah. It's like
Yeah.
glass.
All right.
They were-
They probably took
they
it
were
down to
remodeling
rebuild
it.
it, yeah, they
They're
probably took
remodeling
it down to do that, but it is enclosed. And I've seen them there with the propane heaters too.
Right, so we have that, you know, you have Putting Green, you got utilities.
I think we also bounced around, we want to maintain the restrooms strictly indoors, or do we want to have an outdoor access restroom? If that's feasible, if that would fit in the.
Well, I think if there's a cart area, pickup, drop-off cart area, that there should be one over there too.
I don't remember playing a golf course in my life where there's an access to an outdoor bathroom.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, it sounds like it should
You
be.
ever play Acushnet?
Well, there's lots of outdoor bathrooms.
So maybe outdoor bathrooms out there. I just think that, you know, I think we're in a good spot right now as a committee where we've decided on a close number on budget, close number on square footage. Location we have is TBD, but we have some ideas. I think we pause now, go to the architect, to Adam's point, get him engaged. And we can answer the questions that you had asked earlier, like, hey, these are things we can't give up, these are things we can give up. And then he's gonna build his first pass at it from the data we give him.
Yes. John?
Just that, I want to circle back to your comments about prevailing wage. How much more does prevailing wage add to a project?
About 25% probably.
So here's my thought. If you get into a specific type of building, like a modular structure that's built in a factory and brought out, do you do an end run around prevailing wage? Because you don't pay prevailing wage in a factory setting, in a sense.
Pay everybody prevailing wage on a municipal project. I do insurance claims,
Right?
and I've done a lot of municipal buildings.
So John,
If it's over a certain amount, you pay everybody.
So
True Modules has a slight exception.
Yeah.
In that, like, the construction of it itself, like in that factory,
okay,
is not that cost, it's what it is.
Right.
Once they deliver it to site,
Very put together.
anybody who's putting it together, and now paying prevailing wage for the people working on it, who are, you know, assembling it, doing the finished wiring, finished plumbing, all of that.
even if
stuff.
it's that same company?
Yes.
Well, that company doesn't, from my
They won't
experience,
put it together.
you order them from the factory and they're delivered, and it's your responsibility to set them up to code.
Okay.
you
So
know.
would there be a savings involved?
Well, it could be, you know, once we have the construction drawings and that sort of thing, we could approach a factory and say, how much does it cost to build one of these? I mean, it depends.
We can tell the architect that in the beginning, hey, is there a way to do this modular where we can save a few bucks?
And it would be faster too, I'm sure. You don't have to worry about weather conditions outside until you go to set up.
Right.
But my thought is, if you're doing stick built, traditional stick built, it all depends on your weather conditions, you know. Maybe you have good weather, maybe you don't. But if you build it in a factory, it gets shipped out, now you're only worried about putting it together.
Right. I mean, there are additional charges of transportation, I know from my business that, you know, any size manufactured home,
Okay,
they're getting, you know, we buy out of Pennsylvania.
yeah,
So there's an additional $4,000 to get it here,
okay.
you know.
You're still gonna have that, and if you even present it, you're gonna have to present it in a bid. When they bid this project, everybody's gonna have to realize, okay, we're bidding a stick built, or we're bidding something that's gonna be made in the factory, it's gotta be in the bids.
Yeah, you would put it
It's not like you can just say, wait, we want it, you know,
Yeah,
prefab, you can't,
Yeah.
it's gonna have to go out to bid, you're gonna have to bid on it,
yeah.
and everybody's gonna be bidding the same thing.
I think the most important thing now is to engage with the architect.
Yeah.
And we're gonna learn so much more once we
Yes.
get there. I think for now, like I said earlier, we put this on a pause on our end, get the architect engaged, and then we do all the things we just talked about, getting him to understand, get him and his firm to understand where we think we're at, and then we start
Right.
checking boxes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that reasonable?
if we can get in touch with them, and say, you know, we have a budget now, this is what it is, what else do you need from us? But do you need anything else from us before we have a meeting together? Like, maybe he doesn't. If he does, then, you know, maybe we can have a quick meeting ahead of, you know, in between when, now and when we'll meet with him to just kind of hash all that out or whatever.
Is there a room that we could use, that we could bring a projector? I mean, we could technically use that wall, and he could film from back here, if we had because we won't, if the architect is good, he's gonna bring in slides for us to look at, and
Yes.
I don't wanna look at it on paper, I wanna see it on
Is
the
there a
page.
smart board anywhere?
There is, so the
Okay.
Selectmen's meeting room has a pretty large smart board that everyone can see if you're all sitting at the
Yeah,
regular seating
So
area.
that'd be perfect then.
It'd be nice, he was gonna present to us a couple weeks ago, and it didn't work, so we were like, yeah, it'd be nice to see.
Oh,
something.
absolutely.
Does that make
So
sense?
you guys can meet next week to chat before you bring them in one more time.
Well, we have to contact him first,
Yeah.
or he has to contact us.
I'll call
Yeah,
them
no,
tomorrow.
right.
I wanted to let them know that the selectmen officially voted on the contract last week anyway, so
Okay,
I've got a cell phone, I'll call them.
all right, and if there's no success, I'm away next week. Rich, you can,
Well, if
Call him
there's something
and-
to do, we should have a meeting. If we're still in limbo with the architect, I'm not sure we should meet again, unless you guys wanna do it, I just don't.
no,
I think we did a good job tonight, everyone did a good job tonight, getting those 3 bullet points, kind of figured out. And now that we got that dialed in, our next step is working with the architect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once we do that, I'll meet next week if we have data for him, if he's available.
Okay, so, we're gonna leave it that, we're not gonna determine a next meeting date at this moment. And we're gonna wait to hear from the architect and see what he can, we can meet with him and have our ducks in a row, so when he comes here, he can leave the meeting with all the information he needs to start doing what he's doing.
I like it.
Sound good? All right, very good. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.